We are so lucky to live in Canada. Each day that we can come to school safely and freely is because of the men and women throughout history who have stood against enemies who want to take our freedoms away.
Each year on the 11th hour of the 11th day on the 11th month, Canadians stop and pause to remember those who died for our freedom and to think about those who served our country and still serve.
Canada fought in World War I as part of the British forces. Soldiers stood in trenches covered in mud and fought the soldiers of enemies face to face. Enemies were everywhere.
The Canadian forces sent over 600,000 people to war.
When the war broke out, there were many volunteers, but by 1917, many soldiers had died. More soldiers were needed, so the government passed a law that all males aged 20 to 40 had to serve in the war. This was called conscription. We were losing the war along with our allies. In April of 1917, Canadian soldiers fought at Vimy Ridge.
Vimy Ridge is in France. Four groups of Canadian forces worked together for the first time in war. In battle groups against the Germans, winning the battle and causing a turn point in the war.
It is said that Vimy Ridge helped define Canada as a country. After Vimy Ridge, the first Canadian commander, Arthur Currie, took control of the Canadian court. When the Germans surrendered, it was agreed the war would end on November 11th at 11 a.m. 1918. There will never be another war.
Though we know that is not what happened. In the 1930s, Germany was invading countries, and when they invaded Poland, the rest of the world took notice and declared war.
England and France declared war first, and Canada joined in a few days later. They sent armed forces like troops, air forces like planes and pilots, and the Navy with their ships and soldiers.
Did you know that Canada had one of the world's largest navies by the end of World War II? And it was the first time women served in the war as members of the armed forces.
The Battle of the Atlantic was fought from the first day of war in 1939 until the last day of the war in 1944. German submarines known as U-boats tried to sink ships full of people and supplies headed to Europe. The Canadians helped keep these supply lines open.
When 1 million Canadians and Newfoundlanders served in World War II, Newfoundland joined Canada in 1949.
Canada was an important ally during the war. On D-Day, Canadians took Juno Beach in Normandy, France, from the Germans.
D-Day was on June 6, 1944, and the Allied forces planned a secret mission to surprise the Germans along the coast of France. 14,000 Canadian soldiers were a part of this mission. By the time the Battle of Normandy was over, thousands of Canadian soldiers had died.
This is why we need to remember them. Young people not much older than us gave up their lives, their families, and their friends to travel across the ocean to stand up for us. So many soldiers died for us.
The world wars were a long time ago, but Canada's dedication to protecting the rights and freedoms of others continue.
Canada has a long history of being peacekeepers. The United Nations was an alliance of countries that decided to work together to never have another world war.
While there have been some smaller wars since World War II, there has never been a war that has killed so many people from so many countries. Canadian soldiers served in the Korean War in 1950-1953 as part of the United Nations peacekeeping team.
States was attacked on September 11, 2001 by terrorists. Canada joined many other countries in declaring a war on Afghanistan.
The Afghanistan War went on longer than both world wars combined, and Canada lost 133 soldiers.
While we remember the soldiers we lost, we must also honor the soldiers we have. We do not have as many soldiers currently in the military as we did during the world wars, but they are still as dedicated to watch over us. This is why we remember. This is why every year we hold Remembrance Day ceremonies. This is why we wear poppies over our hearts to remember.
In Canada, the poppy is a symbol of remembrance. When you wear your poppy, wear it to remember the many men and women who gave their lives and hearts for us.
And at school, we have an assembly to remember. We sit quietly and listen and don't clap for the performances or speakers. This is to show respect for the soldiers.
We honor them with a moment of silence. For that moment, you can think about how grateful we are for living in Canada where we can be free. And sometimes you'll hear a trumpet player. The trumpeter is usually playing a song called The Last Post. This is the song played for soldiers when they die.
Canada has a long military history, and it is important that we learn about it so that we never make the mistakes from the past again. We must speak up for our rights and we must stand up for the rights of others.
It is our duty as Canadians, and it is the best way to honor those who have died in service and those who continue to serve.
When you see a soldiers, be sure to thank you. Say thank you for behalf of all the lives that they have been saved.
It is very easy in our busy day-to-day lives to forget about the sacrifices made by others. Let's all take a moment to think about how lucky we are to live in Canada, such a wonderful country.